winter of 1889 came early to Dry Willow, bringing with it a cutting wind that whistled through the gaps in the wooden storefronts and sent tumbleweeds dancing like restless ghosts across Main Street. Eli Cartwright pulled his worn coat tighter as he guided his horse through the crowded Saturday market, his gray eyes scanning the familiar faces without truly seeing them. At 39, he'd grown comfortable with his isolation, content to keep to his small ranch 5 miles outside town where the memories couldn't follow quite so close. The horse market sprawled across the eastern edge of town, a maze of temporary corrals and auction blocks where ranchers, traders, and drifters converged to buy, sell, and gossip. Steam rose from the breath of horses and men alike in the frigid morning air. Eli had come to trade his aging draft mare for something younger. Maybe pick up some grain if the prices weren't too steep. Simple business, nothing more. He dismounted near Hendrick's corral, nodding to the old German who'd been selling horses in these parts since before the railroad came through. "Morning, Eli?" Hendrick called out, his accent still thick after 30 years. "Looking for anything particular?" "Something steady," Eli replied, his voice rough from disuse. "Nothing fancy." That's when he saw her. She stood out like a hawk among pigeons, despite her plain brown dress and practical boots. Dark auburn hair pinned up proper, but with wisps escaping to frame a face that belonged in a Boston parlor, not a frontier horse market. She moved through the crowd with purpose, her green eyes sharp and calculating as they swept over the assembled men. Most would have called her beautiful, but Eli noticed something else the way her jaw set firm, the careful distance she kept from the rougher elements, the small leather satchel she clutched like it held the secrets of the territory. Maeve O'Rourke had been in Dry Willow for 3 years, teaching letters to miners' children and keeping books for the newspaper when old Samuel's rheumatism got too bad. Folks called her May, when they called her anything at all. A widow, they said, though nobody had ever seen her mourn. She lived in a boarding house run by the widow Martinez and kept to herself mostly, which suited the town just fine. They had enough gossip without adding a mysterious schoolteacher to the mix. But today, something was different. Eli watched as she approached a group of men gathered near the auction platform. Not just any men Brant Coulter's crew, even from across the yard. Eli recognized the silver conchos on Coulter's vest, the expensive Stetson that never seemed to collect dust. At 55, Coulter owned more cattle than God and twice as much influence in the territorial courts. Beside him stood Judge Horace Lyle, thin as a fence post and twice as rigid, his black coat making him look like an undertaker at a birthday party. And then there was Ty Mallory. Red, they called him, for the color his face turned when he was fixing to shoot someone. 33 years old and built like a prize fighter gone to seed, with hands that had done things decent folks didn't talk about in daylight. He stood slightly behind Coulter, those pale eyes of his sweeping the crowd like a wolf watching sheep. Eli turned back to Hendrick's horses, telling himself it wasn't his business. Whatever that woman was doing with Coulter's bunch, she'd made her choice. He ran his hand along a bay gelding's flank, checking for heat or swelling, trying to focus on the simple task at hand. "Mr. Cartwright," the voice came from directly behind him. Soft but urgent. He turned to find May O'Rourke, standing close enough that he could smell the lavender soap she used, see the faint freckles across her nose that powder couldn't quite hide. "Ma'am." He touched his hat brim, took a step back, up close. He could see the strain around her eyes, the way her fingers trembled slightly on that satchel. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at him. "I need you to buy me." Eli blinked. "Pardon?" "From them." She tilted her head toward Coulter's group. "They're about to put me up for auction. A labor debt. They claim it's all legal, or legal enough for Judge Lyle." Her voice stayed steady, but he caught the steel underneath. "I need someone to outbid them." "Lady, I don't know what game you're—" She pressed something into his hand. Cold metal. He looked down to see a pair of handcuffs, the kind the sheriff used for transporting prisoners. Please, she said, and for the first time, her voice cracked just a little. Buy me away from them. I can explain everything later, but right now, I need you to act like you know exactly what you're doing. Eli looked at the cuffs, then at her face. Every instinct told him to hand them back, mount his horse, and ride home to his quiet ranch where the biggest problem was fixing fence posts and keeping coyotes out of the chicken coop. He'd learned long ago what happened when you stuck your neck out for strangers. The smell of smoke and burning flesh tried to claw its way up from memory, and he pushed it down hard. Why me? He asked. Because you're the only man in this market who looked at me and saw trouble instead of opportunity, she said. And because I know who you used to be, Mr. Cartwright, Army Scout, the kind who could track a Apache war party across solid rock, the kind who... That was a long time ago. Not so long that you've forgotten how to read a situation. She glanced again toward Coulter. They're moving. Please. Sure enough, Judge Lyle had climbed onto the auction platform, and Red Mallory was herding a small group of people toward it, 2 Mexican men, an older Chinese woman, and now May, who walked with her chin high like she was heading to church instead of a slave auction, because that's what it was, no matter what fancy legal terms they wrapped it in. Debt bondage, indentured servitude, pretty words for an ugly practice that the territory turned a blind eye to. Eli cursed under his breath. He had maybe $40 to his name, the money he'd saved to buy a new saddle. Not enough for a horse. Probably not enough for a person either. But something about the way she'd said, I know who you used to be, stuck in his craw. What did a schoolteacher know about his past, and why did it matter? Judge Lyle's reedy voice carried across the yard. Gentlemen, we have several individuals today who have failed to meet their financial obligations. As per territorial statute, they may satisfy these debts through contracted labor. Bidding begins at the amount owed. The 2 Mexican men went first, brothers by the look of them, probably caught in Coulter's web of inflated prices at the company's store. They went to a mine operator for $18 each. The Chinese woman, elderly and bent, was purchased by the hotel for $12 kitchen work until her debt was paid, which everyone knew meant until she died. Next, Judge Lyle announced, consulting his papers with theatrical gravity. We have Mrs. Maeve O'Rourke, debt of $35 to Coulter Enterprises for unpaid rent and sundries. Eli pushed through the crowd, the handcuffs heavy in his pocket. $35. He had 40. It would leave him with nothing, but he'd been left with nothing before and survived. The bidding opens at $40, Eli called out, his voice carrying clear across the yard. Every head turned. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Even the horses seemed to quiet their stamping and snorting. Brant Coulter's eyes narrowed to slits, and Red Mallory's hand drifted toward his gun belt. Judge Lyle recovered first, adjusting his spectacles. Aye, the bidding opens at $35, sir. The amount of the debt. I said 40. Eli pulled the roll of bills from his coat, held it high so everyone could see. Unless someone wants to bid higher. Coulter stepped forward, his spurs ringing against the platform steps. That's mighty generous. Cartwright, didn't know you were in the market for domestic help. Man needs someone who can read and write. Eli said evenly, keep the book straight. $45, Coulter said, his voice smooth as snake oil. Eli's jaw tightened. He didn't have $45. But May caught his eye from where she stood on the platform and gave the tiniest shake of her head. Trust me, that look said. $50, Eli announced. Cash money, right now. The crowd murmured. $50 was more than most of them saw in 2 months. For a woman's labor contract unheard of. Coulter's face darkened. You don't have $50, Cartwright. I've got 40 in cash. Eli climbed the platform steps, pulled out the bills. And this, He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew his most prized possession, a Winchester 1873, the gun that had seen him through 5 years of Army service and 10 years of ranching. Worth $20 any day of the week, more than enough to cover the bid. Judge Lyle looked to Coulter, clearly out of his depth. This wasn't how these auctions usually went. They were quiet affairs, predetermined outcomes wrapped in legal ribbon. But with half the town watching, he couldn't very well refuse a legitimate bid. $50, Lyle said weakly. Going once? Red Mallory stepped forward, but Coulter held up a hand. His eyes never left Eli's face. Let him have her, he said quietly. Man wants to throw away good money on a sharp-tongued woman? That's his business. Sold, Judge Lyle said quickly, banging his gavel with an obvious relief. Eli handed over the money and his rifle, trying not to think about how he'd defend his ranch without it. May descended from the platform, and he fell into step beside her, acutely aware of every eye following their progress through the crowd. The handcuffs, she murmured. You need to use them. Make it look real. His hands hesitated. That's not necessary. It is if we're going to sell this performance. She held out her wrists, and he noticed they were already marked with faint bruises. Please, they need to believe you're taking this seriously. Against every instinct, Eli clicked the cuffs around her wrists. The sound seemed to echo in the sudden quiet of the market. May didn't flinch, just lifted her chin another notch and walked beside him like a queen in chains. They'd made it halfway to his horse when Red Mallory appeared in their path. Mighty interesting purchase. Cartwright, he said, tobacco juice staining the corner of his mouth. Hope you know what you're getting into. I know enough, Eli replied, keeping his voice neutral. Do you? Red smiled, and it was all teeth and no warmth. Woman like that, she's got secrets. Secrets that might get a man killed if he's not careful. I'll take my chances. Your funeral. Red stepped aside, but not before leaning close to May. This ain't over, schoolteacher. You can't run from what's owed. May met his gaze steadily. I'm not running, Mr. Mallory. I'm simply changing the terms of engagement. Something passed between them. A communication Eli couldn't read but didn't like. Then Red touched his hat brim in a mockery of politeness and sauntered back toward Coulter. Eli helped May onto his horse, awkward with her hands bound, then swung up behind her. The crowd parted to let them through, whispers following in their wake like smoke. He could feel the tension in her body, the way she held herself carefully separate despite their forced proximity. Where to? He asked quietly. Your place, she replied. We need to talk, and walls have ears in town. They rode in silence through the streets of Dry Willow, past the mercantile and the saloon, the church with its crooked steeple, the schoolhouse where May had taught children their letters just yesterday. Normal life continuing around them while they played out this strange charade. It wasn't until they'd left the last building behind, until the road opened up into the vast brown expanse of the high desert, that May finally sagged against him slightly. Thank you, she said so quietly he almost missed it. Don't thank me yet, Eli replied. I just gave up everything I had for a complete stranger. You better have one hell of an explanation. She turned her head slightly, and he caught a glimpse of her profile, sharp and determined against the endless sky. Mr. Cartwright, what I'm about to tell you might get us both killed, but if we're very clever and very lucky, it might also save this entire territory from men like Brant Coulter. Despite himself, despite every hard-learned lesson about staying uninvolved, Eli found himself wanting to hear more. The wind picked up, sending a tumbled sage bouncing across their path, and overhead, a red-tailed hawk circled against clouds heavy with the promise of snow. All right, he said finally. But first, let's get these damn cuffs off you. For the first time since she'd approached him at the market, May O'Rourke smiled. It was a small thing, just a slight upturn at the corner of her mouth, but it transformed her face entirely. "Actually," she said, "let's leave them on just a little longer. We might have company following us, and I'd hate to break character before the final curtain." Eli twisted in the saddle, scanning their back trail with the automatic precision of years spent reading landscape for danger. Sure enough, a rider hung back about a quarter mile, trying to look casual and failing miserably. "A red?" he asked. "One of his boys, probably." May shifted slightly, the cuffs clinking. "They'll follow us to your ranch. Make sure this is real. After that—" She shrugged. "After that, Mr. Cartwright, we'll see if you're still the man I've heard stories about." The storm clouds were definitely moving in now, turning the afternoon light gray and strange. Eli urged his horse to a faster pace, anxious to reach shelter before the weather turned. 5 miles had never seemed so long, and the woman sitting in front of him had never seemed so dangerous. But he'd bought her, fair and square, in front of half the town, whatever game she was playing. He was in it now, for better or worse. And as the first snowflakes began to fall, soft as ash from a distant fire, Eli Cartwright had the sinking feeling that his quiet, isolated life had just come to an abrupt and permanent end. The snowfall thickened as they rode, transforming the familiar landscape into something alien and threatening. What had started as lazy flakes now drove sideways in sheets, stinging exposed skin and turning the trail into a white blur. Eli's horse stumbled, recovered, then stumbled again. "This is turning bad fast," he shouted over the rising wind. The rider who'd been following them had disappeared, either turned back or lost in the whiteout conditions. "We need shelter." May pressed closer against him, seeking warmth. The handcuffs were gone now. He'd unlocked them once they were out of sight of town, but she kept her hands folded as if still bound. "How far to your ranch?" 3 miles, maybe 4. He squinted through the snow, trying to find landmarks. 20 years in this country, and a blizzard could still make you blind as a newborn. "But there's an old relay station about a mile east, abandoned since the stage line moved its route." She nodded against his shoulder. "Then we go there." The wind howled like something alive and hungry, tearing at their clothes, trying to pull them from the saddle. Eli's horse put its head down and plowed forward, trusting its rider to guide it true. Every few minutes, Eli had to stop and clear the ice from the animal's nostrils, his fingers going numb despite his gloves. "There," May pointed through the swirling white. The relay station materialized like a ghost ship in fog, a low adobe structure with a partially collapsed roof. But the walls still stood strong. More importantly, the attached stable remained intact. Eli guided his exhausted horse through the doorway, and suddenly the wind scream dropped to a muffled roar. "Thank God," May breathed, sliding from the saddle. Her legs buckled, and Eli caught her arm. "Easy. Let me see to the horse first. Then we'll get a fire going." She nodded, leaning against the wall while he unsaddled his mount and rubbed it down with handfuls of old straw. The stable held evidence of other travelers, a stack of relatively fresh firewood, some grain in a barrel that mice hadn't completely destroyed, emergency supplies for those caught by weather, maintained by unspoken agreement among the folks who traveled these roads. "Through here," Eli said, leading May through a doorway into what had been the main room of the station. The roof leaked in one corner, but the fireplace looked sound. He knelt by the hearth, grateful to find kindling and matches in a tin box on the mantel. Soon, orange flames danced against the adobe walls, pushing back the cold. May huddled close to the fire, her wet clothes steaming. In the flickering light, she looked younger, more vulnerable. The schoolteacher facade had cracked, revealing something rawer underneath. "We should be safe here until the storm passes," Eli said, adding another log. "Now, you want to tell me what I've gotten myself into?" May was quiet for a long moment, staring into the flames. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of old grief. My name is Maeve O'Rourke, and that much is true, but I'm not a widow. She pulled a leather envelope from inside her coat, handling it like it might bite. I'm a wife, or was. It's complicated. She handed him the envelope. Inside, Eli found 3 documents, a marriage certificate, a hand-drawn map showing property boundaries, and a letter written in a shaky hand. Read the certificate first, May said. Eli held it close to the fire. The elaborate script was hard to make out, but the names were clear enough. Maeve Elizabeth O'Rourke and James Benjamin Coulter, married June 15th, 1887 in Prescott, Arizona Territory. Coulter, Eli said slowly. As in Brant Coulter's eldest son, yes. May's laugh held no humor. The family's great disappointment. Jamie wanted to be a doctor, not a cattle baron. He had gentle hands, gentle heart, nothing like his father. What happened to him? He died 16 months ago. A hunting accident, they said. Her fingers clenched in her lap. Only Jamie never hunted. He couldn't stand the sight of blood, and the night before he died, he wrote me this letter. Eli unfolded the second paper, noting the uneven handwriting, as if the writer's hand had been trembling. Asterisk. My dearest Maeve, if you are reading this, then my fears have come to pass. Father has discovered our marriage and the provisions of grandfather's will. I thought I could protect you, protect what we've built together. But I was wrong. The land with the water rights, it's all legal, all ours. But Father will never accept it. He's bringing Judge Lyle tomorrow to discuss the matter. I fear what they might do. I've hidden the original deed and survey map where we used to meet, beneath the white stone. If something happens to me, take them to federal authorities. Don't trust the local law. All my love. Jamie Asterisk. We married in secret, May explained, her voice steady now. Jamie knew his father would never approve. I was nobody, a schoolteacher from Ohio with no family connections, but Jamie's grandfather had liked me. Old Sam Coulter was nothing like his son. When he died, he left a provision in his will if Jamie married and had the marriage properly recorded, he would inherit Sweetwater Valley. The land with water rights, Eli guessed. The only reliable water source for 50 miles in any direction. Control the water. Control everything. Brant's been illegally grazing his cattle there for years, charging other ranchers for access. If Jamie's inheritance became public, she shrugged. So Brant made sure it didn't. You're saying Coulter killed his own son? I'm saying Jamie went riding with his father and Judge Lyle and came back dead, shot through the heart. Hunting accident, they said. Case closed. The bitterness in her voice could have curdled milk. I couldn't even claim his body as his wife that would have revealed the marriage. I had to sit in that church and watch them bury him while his father played the grieving patriarch. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the old station, the circle of warmth felt like a separate world. Why now? Eli asked. Why reveal yourself after 16 months? Because I finally found the deed and map Jamie hid. And because Coulter's getting bolder. This drought last summer hurt everyone except him. He's buying up failing ranches for pennies on the dollar, expanding his empire. Soon he'll own everything from here to Santa Fe. She met his eyes across the fire. Unless someone stops him. And you think that someone is you, a school teacher with a piece of paper? A legal heir with proof of ownership, witnessed and sealed in Arizona Territory where Coulter's pet judge has no jurisdiction. She leaned forward. All I need is to get to the federal courthouse in Santa Fe, file the proper claims. But Coulter's watching every road, every stage. That's why I needed a creative solution. So you had yourself sold into labor bondage. I knew Coulter would put me up for auction eventually. He's been inventing debts, adding charges to my rent, trying to force me out of town. I just accelerated his timeline. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. And I knew you'd be at the horse market today. You come the first Saturday of every month, regular as clockwork. Eli felt heat rise in his face that had nothing to do with the fire. "You've been watching me. I've been watching everyone, learning who might help when the time came. You were my best option, a man with military training who keeps to himself. No ties to Coulter's organization." She paused. "And a man who understands what it means to carry guilt." The words hit him like cold water. "What do you know about that?" "I know that Captain Eli Cartwright led a detachment that tracked what they thought was a raiding party to a mining camp in the Superstition Mountains. I know the camp burned. I know 17 Chinese miners died in the fire, including women and children." Her voice gentled. "And I know you resigned your commission the next day, and haven't worn a uniform since." Eli stood abruptly, pacing to the window. Snow had covered the glass, but he stared at it anyway. "That's old history." "Is it? Is that why you live alone, 5 miles from town? Why you barely speak to anyone beyond what's necessary for business?" Footsteps approached, and he felt her presence beside him. "We all carry our dead. Mr. Cartwright, the question is whether we let them bury us too. Those people died because of bad intelligence I provided. Those people died because someone gave you false information. Someone who wanted that mining claim cleared." She touched his arm lightly. "I've done my research. The claim was jumped 2 weeks after the fire. Guess whose mining company took it over?" Eli turned slowly. "Coulter." "Through intermediaries. But yes, he's been playing this game a long time, using decent people as pawns." Her green eyes blazed with determination. "I'm offering you a chance to stop him, to save lives instead of—" The door exploded inward in a crash of splintering wood and driving snow. Ty Mallory filled the doorframe, revolver drawn, his red hair white with snow. Well, ain't this cozy?" Eli stepped in front of May instinctively. His hand reaching for a gun that wasn't there, he'd traded his rifle for her freedom. "Storm drive you to shelter too, Mallory?" "Something like that." Red advanced into the room, ice melting off his coat and puddling on the floor. "Though I got to say, finding you two here saves me a ride in the morning. Boss wants a word with his daughter-in-law." "Former daughter-in-law," May corrected. Stepping out from behind Eli. "Jamie's dead. Remember your boss saw to that." Red's grin was all predator. "Funny thing about that. See, without proof of marriage, you're just another debt skipper, but with proof." He leveled the gun at Eli. "Well, that makes you a problem needs solving." Eli calculated distances, angles. The fire poker was too far. The woodpile offered no advantage. Mallory was good with a gun. Everyone knew that. Without a weapon, May moved faster than either man expected. The ceramic water pitcher by the hearth shattered against Red's gun hand, sending the weapon spinning. Eli lunged, catching the bigger man around the waist, using momentum to drive him into the adobe wall. They went down in a tangle of limbs, fists flying. Red was heavier, stronger, but Eli had learned to fight from Apache scouts who prize speed over power. He got an elbow into Red's throat, rolled free, came up reaching for the fallen gun. Red's boot caught him in the ribs, sending him sprawling. Stars exploded across his vision as his head struck the floor. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard May scream. Then, impossibly, the sound of a rifle being cocked. "That's enough." Eli blinked, focusing. May stood by the fireplace, his Winchester trained on Red Mallory. But that was impossible he'd traded the rifle for. "You brought it," he wheezed, understanding flooding through him. "In your things. You brought my rifle." "I bought it back this morning," May said calmly, never taking her eyes off Red. $45 to Hendrick. He was happy to make a profit. To Mallory, stand up slowly. Red rose, hands spread, but his smile never wavered. "You won't shoot me, schoolmarm. You don't have it in you." "You're probably right," May admitted. "But I will shoot your horse. How do you fancy walking 20 miles through a blizzard?" That wiped the smile off his face. In this country, in this weather, a man without a horse was as good as dead. Here's what's going to happen. May continued. You're going to walk out that door, get on your horse, and ride back to town. You'll tell Coulter you lost us in the storm. Tomorrow, when the weather clears, we'll be long gone. He'll hunt you to the ends of the earth. Maybe, but not tonight. She gestured with the rifle. Go! Red looked between them, calculating. Then he shrugged, moving toward the door. This ain't over, not by a long shot. I know, May said quietly. They watched him disappear into the white wall of storm. A moment later, hoofbeats faded into the wind's howl. Only then did May lower the rifle, her hands beginning to shake. You all right? Eli asked, gingerly touching his ribs. I've never pointed a gun at anyone before. She set the Winchester carefully against the wall. I don't care for it. You did fine. He limped to the door, wedging it shut with a chair. Though we can't stay here now, soon as the storm breaks, we need to move. Where? Eli considered. His ranch was compromised. Town was Coulter's territory. But there were other options. Paths through the mountains he'd learned in his scouting days. Places where a determined tracker might lose pursuit. I know some people, he said finally. Good people who've got no love for Coulter. We can make Santa Fe in 4 days if we push hard. But we'll need supplies, fresh horses. He turned to study her. This is your last chance to change your mind. Once we run, there's no going back. May retrieved the leather envelope from where it had fallen during the fight, clutching it like a talisman. There never was any going back, Mr. Cartwright, not since the day they killed Jamie. Thunder rumbled overhead, unusual for a snowstorm, but not unheard of in this high country where weather had its own rules. In the firelight, with snow melting in her hair and fierce determination in her eyes, she looked like something out of an old story, a warrior queen, perhaps, or an avenging angel. All right, then, Eli said, settling down by the fire to wait out the storm. Tell me about this deed Jamie hid, and while you're at it, maybe explain how a schoolteacher from Ohio learns to move like a saloon fighter. May smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. That, Mr. Cartwright, is a story in itself. But since we have time, she settled across from him, the fire between them like a promise. Did I mention I have 3 older brothers? All railroad workers. They thought their baby sister should know how to handle herself in rough company. Despite everything, the fight, the storm, the dangerous road ahead, Eli found himself smiling back. Remind me to thank them if we ever meet. Oh, you will, May said. They're in Santa Fe, waiting for my telegram. Did I forget to mention that part? Eli laughed, surprising himself. When was the last time he'd done that? Any other surprises I should know about? A few, she admitted. But where would be the fun in revealing them all at once? Outside, the storm raged on. But inside the abandoned station, something had shifted. 2 strangers brought together by desperate circumstances, perhaps, but no longer strangers. And as the night deepened and the fire burned low, Eli found himself thinking that maybe, just maybe, his long isolation had finally found its purpose. Tomorrow would bring danger, pursuit, the long road to Santa Fe. But tonight, with May O'Rourke's quiet breathing and the storm's fury making them an island in the wilderness, Eli Cartwright felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Hope. The morning after the storm dawned crystal clear and bitter cold, the kind of day where your breath froze before it left your lips. Eli and May rode into Dry Willow just after sunrise, the town still half asleep under its blanket of new snow. They'd spent the pre-dawn hours at Eli's ranch, gathering what supplies they could: ammunition, dried beef, his savings from beneath a loose floorboard, $23. Not much to start a war with, but it would have to do. We need allies, May said as they hitched their horses outside the Sage Hen Inn. People who've suffered under Coulter's thumb but haven't been broken by it yet. Eli nodded toward the inn. Nora Vega runs this place. Her husband died in a mine cave-in 3 years back, one of Coulter's operations. She's tough as boot leather and twice as smart. They found Nora in the kitchen, kneading bread with the focused intensity of someone working out their anger on innocent dough. She was a handsome woman in her 40s, with steel-gray streaks in her black hair and eyes that had seen too much but refused to look away. "Eli Cartwright," she said without glancing up. "Heard you bought yourself some trouble at the market yesterday. News travels fast. Faster than snow." She finally looked at them, taking in May's determined face and the way they stood together, not touching, but clearly allied. "Coffee's hot. Sit." Over strong coffee and fresh biscuits, May laid out the situation, the marriage certificate, the deed, Jamie's death. Nora listened without interrupting, her expression growing harder with each revelation. "I knew Jamie," she said finally. "Sweet boy. Used to sneak into my kitchen for pan dulce when he was young, before his father decided mixing with Mexicans was beneath a Coulter." She poured more coffee with steady hands. "Always wondered about that hunting accident." "Will you help us?" May asked. "What do you need?" "Information. Coulter's been manipulating property records, creating false debts. We need proof documents, ledgers, anything that shows the pattern." Nora considered. "Judge Lyle takes his meals here when he's in town, gets drunk on wine, talks too much, and his clerk, Timothy Morse, has been sweet on my daughter Rosa." A smile played at her lips. "Young men do foolish things for pretty girls." "We also need to know who else might stand with us," Eli added. "This can't be a two-person fight." "Deputy Pike," Nora said immediately. "Jonah's a good boy, wants to do right, but Sheriff Brennan's in Coulter's pocket, been eating at Jonah something fierce, watching the law get bent and broken." She tapped her fingers on the table, thinking. "And Doc Bell, Ada's patched up too many accidents that happened to folks who crossed Coulter. She keeps records of everything might be useful." A commotion in the street drew their attention. Through the frost-glazed window, they could see riders gathering Coulter's men, their horses' breath steaming in the cold air. Red Mallory sat his mount in the center, gesturing angrily. "Looks like they're organizing a search party," Eli observed. "Let them search," May said. "We're hidden in plain sight." But Nora shook her head. "Not for long. Coulter owns half the businesses in town. Soon as he puts the word out, you won't be able to buy a meal or rent a room." She stood. Decision made. Rosa Van Agga, Mija. A young woman appeared in the doorway, maybe 19, with her mother's strong features softened by youth. Nora spoke rapid Spanish, and Rosa nodded, disappearing back into the inn. "You'll stay here," Nora announced. "Third floor. The room at the back. Used to be my husband's office, has its own entrance down the outside stairs. Coulter's men won't think to look in his enemy's house." "We can't put you at risk," May protested. "Child, I've been at risk since the day I refused to sell this place to Coulter for 1/10 of its worth." Nora's eyes flashed. "Besides, someone needs to start standing up to that man. Might as well be today." They spent the morning establishing their base of operations. The room Nora provided was small but serviceable, with a desk, a narrow bed, and, most importantly, a window overlooking the sheriff's office. Rosa brought up blankets and a basket of food, blushing furiously when Eli thanked her. "She's not usually so shy," Nora said dryly. "Must be your dangerous reputation. Senor Cartwright, the mysterious rancher who lives alone, shows up in town only for supplies." She turned to May. "You sure you know what you're getting into with this one?" "I'm learning as I go," May replied, and something in her tone made Nora laugh. Their first recruit came that afternoon. Deputy Jonah Pike knocked on the back door just after 2 o'clock, looking like he'd aged 5 years in the past day. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of honest face that would never be good at poker. "Mrs. Vega said you wanted to see me," he said, hat in hands. "This about what happened at the market?" It's about what's been happening in this town for years, May said. Sit down, deputy. We have a proposition for you. Jonah listened to their story with growing agitation, his hands clenching and unclenching on his hat brim. When May showed him the marriage certificate and Jamie's letter, he shot to his feet. I knew it, he burst out. I knew something was wrong about that hunting accident. Sheriff Brennan shut down any questions before I could even ask them. He paced the small room like a caged cat. But what can I do? I'm just a deputy. And Brennan's been sheriff for 12 years, Eli interrupted. All of them under Coulter's thumb. But you took an oath to uphold the law, not Coulter's version of it. We're not asking you to face him directly. May added, just to keep your eyes open. Let us know what Coulter's planning. Maybe look the other way if certain documents go missing from the courthouse. Jonah stared at them, and Eli could see the war playing out on his face. Duty versus survival, righteousness versus reality. Finally, his shoulders squared. My PA was a lawman in Kansas, he said quietly. Died stopping a bank robbery when I was 10. Before he left that morning, he told me a man's only as good as his word, and a lawman's word is sacred. He met their eyes. I gave my word to protect this town. About time I started keeping it. Their second recruit arrived as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the snow. Doctor. Ada Bell didn't knock. She just walked in like she owned the place, medical bag in hand and fire in her eyes. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself like someone twice her size. Her dark skin bore the lines of someone who'd fought for every scrap of respect she'd earned. Jonah Pike, sporting a black eye, she announced without preamble. Says he walked into a door, but I know Brennan's fist marks when I see them. She set her bag on the desk with a thump. I take it that's your doing. We asked him to help us, May said carefully. And Brennan found out. Boy can't lie worth spit. Ada turned her sharp gaze on them. So you're the ones planning to take on Coulter? About damn time someone tried. Will you help? Eli asked. I've been keeping records for 3 years, Ada said. Every broken bone from a fall. Every woman who came to me with bruises from a husband who owed Coulter money. Every mine worker who coughed up blood from bad air in shafts that should have been condemned. She pulled a leather journal from her bag. It's all here. Names, dates, injuries. Enough to show a pattern if anyone cared to look. We care, May said softly. Do you? Ada's voice could have cut glass. Or are you just using us to get your land back because I've seen reformers come and go, all of them full of promises until they got what they wanted? May stood, meeting the doctor's gaze steadily. My husband is dead. The land won't bring him back, but if we can stop Coulter from killing anyone else's husband, anyone else's son, her voice cracked slightly, then maybe Jamie's death meant something. The two women studied each other for a long moment. Then Ada nodded once, sharp and decisive. All right, but we do this smart. Coulter's got men, money, and the law on his side. What have we got? The truth, Eli said. Ada snorted. Truth's like medicine doesn't work unless people are willing to swallow it. Then we make them willing, May said. She moved to the desk, spreading out papers. Here's what we know so far. They worked through the evening, piecing together the network of Coulter's control. Property records that didn't match tax rolls. Mining claims that changed hands after convenient accidents. The web of debt that trapped families in cycles of poverty while Coulter's empire grew. It's not just about the water rights, Jonah realized, studying the map May had drawn. Control the water. You control who can ranch. Control the ranches. You control food prices. Control food. You control everything, Nora finished. She joined them after closing the inn's dining room, bringing coffee and grim determination. My husband saw it coming. That's why he wouldn't sell the inn. Said as long as there was one place in town Coulter didn't own, people would remember what freedom looked like. A knock at the door made everyone freeze. Eli's hand went to his gun, but Nora waved him down. "That'll be Timothy Morse," she said. "Rosa's young man. I told him to come after the courthouse closed." The clerk was a thin, nervous young man who looked like he might faint at any moment. He clutched a leather satchel to his chest like a shield, darting glances between the assembled conspirators. "I could lose my position for this," he squeaked. "You could lose more than that if Coulter keeps growing stronger," Ada said bluntly. "How many more accidents you want to file paperwork for?" Timothy swallowed hard, then opened his satchel. I made copies, property transfers from the last 2 years, and this." He pulled out a ledger, hands shaking. "Judge Lyle's private accounts. He records every bribe, every payment. I think he's planning to blackmail Coulter someday, so he keeps proof." May took the ledger reverently. "This is evidence of corruption at the highest level. It's evidence that'll get us all killed if Coulter finds out we have it," Eli said. He'd been watching the window, and now he tensed. "Speaking of which riders coming, 6 of them." They scrambled to hide the documents. Timothy went white as paper, but Rosa grabbed his hand, pulling him toward the back stairs. "Just a boy calling on me. Say," she said. "Nothing suspicious about that." The others arranged themselves casually, Ada checking May's pulse as if on a medical visit, Nora pouring coffee, Jonah cleaning his pistol like any off-duty deputy might. Eli stood by the window, watching the riders dismount outside the sheriff's office. "Brennan's with them," he reported. "And Mallory." They waited, tension thick as smoke. The sound of boots on stairs made everyone's breath catch. Then Brennan's voice, talking to someone downstairs. Nora slipping out to intercept him. "No, Sheriff, no trouble here. Just the doctor visiting a patient. You know how these refined Eastern ladies react to our frontier life, all vapors and nervous conditions." Brennan's reply was too low to hear, but Nora laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Search my inn. Of course, if you have a warrant, you do have a warrant, don't you? Sheriff, after all, we must maintain proper legal procedures." More muffled conversation. Then, blessedly, the sound of retreating footsteps. Nora returned, her composure cracking slightly. "He'll be back, with a warrant, if Judge Lyle has anything to say about it." "Then we need to move fast," May said. "How quickly can we get copies of these documents made?" "I can help with that," Timothy offered, some color returning to his face. "There's a printing press in the courthouse basement. I have keys." "Too dangerous," Eli said. "No." May's voice was firm. "It's perfect. The last place they'd expect us to be. We go tonight, make copies of everything, then distribute them where they'll do the most good." "The newspaper," Jonah suggested. "Samuel Hendricks may be old, but he's still got journalist blood. Been chafing under Coulter's restrictions for years." "The church," Ada added. "Reverend Morrison's been preaching about justice lately. Careful-like, but people have noticed." "And the mining camps," Nora said. "Those men have no love for Coulter. Give them proof of what he's been doing." "They need more than proof," Eli said quietly. "They need hope that fighting back won't get them killed." "Then we give them that too," May said. She looked around the room at their small band of rebels. "We show them that Coulter can be challenged, that his power isn't absolute." "How?" Timothy asked. May smiled, and it was sharp as a blade. "By hitting him where it hurts most. His reputation. Tomorrow, Judge Lyle is holding another debt auction. Only this time, we're going to make sure the whole town sees exactly what kind of justice he's selling." The room erupted in planning. Ideas flew fast as bullets: who to contact, what to prepare, how to coordinate. For the first time in years, Eli felt the familiar rush of preparing for a mission. Only this time he wasn't tracking enemies across the desert. This time, he was helping to build something instead of tear it down. As the night deepened and their conspiracy took shape, he caught May watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. What? He asked quietly. You're different than you were yesterday. She said, less careful. Maybe I'm tired of being careful. He met her gaze. Maybe I've been hiding long enough. She reached out, touched his hand briefly. Jamie would have liked you. He believed in second chances, too. Before Eli could respond, Jonah burst through the door, face flushed with excitement and fear. Coulter just rode in with 20 men. He gasped. They're setting up checkpoints on every road out of town. Nobody leaves without his say-so. The room went silent. Then May stood, squaring her shoulders. Good, she said. Let him trap himself in his own web. Tomorrow, we show this town what Brant Coulter really is. And then, her smile was fierce as a prairie fire. Then we see who's really trapped. The drought had come like a thief in the night, stealing moisture from the earth until the soil cracked like broken promises. By the third week without rain, the San Carlos River had dwindled to a muddy trickle, and cattle began dropping dead in the fields. Dry Willow, already struggling under Coulter's economic stranglehold, now faced a crisis that threatened to break its back entirely. Eli stood at the edge of what had been a thriving stream on his property, now reduced to damp stones and dying fish. The morning sun beat down mercilessly, and it was only May. How are your water reserves? May asked. Joining him. She'd taken to wearing men's clothing for their expeditions easier to ride, she said, and less likely to draw unwanted attention. Got maybe 2 weeks in the well, if I'm careful. He squinted at the cloudless sky. Your map showing those water rights is about to become worth its weight in gold. Or blood, she said quietly. Coulter's already charging triple for water access. Those who can't pay. She didn't need to finish. They'd seen the evacuated homesteads, families loading their lives onto wagons and heading east. A dust cloud on the horizon announced riders approaching. Eli's hand moved to his gun, but May touched his arm. It's Ada and Jonah. I asked them to meet us here. The doctor and the deputy arrived, looking grim. Ada's medical bag was dustier than usual, and Jonah's badge had lost its shine. 2 more families left this morning, Ada reported without preamble. The Hendersons and the Kims couldn't afford water for their stock. Sheriff's not even pretending to keep order anymore, Jonah added. Coulter's men are riding open through town, enforcing water discipline. Beat Tom Morrison senseless yesterday for trying to dig a new well on his own property. We need to move on those boundary markers, May said. If we can prove the original water rights. Moving on anything in daylight is suicide, Eli interrupted. Mallory's got men watching every trail. Then we go at night, May said. Tonight. The old boundary stones Jamie mentioned, they're in Skeleton Canyon. Aren't they? Eli nodded reluctantly. The canyon was a maze of box canyons and blind alleys, dangerous enough in daylight, potentially deadly at night. But the original survey markers, if they still existed, would prove that Sweetwater Valley Springs belonged to May by law. I know those canyons. Jonah offered, used to hunt wild horses there as a kid, but we'll need help. At least 6 people to cover that much ground. I'll ask Nora, Ada said. And maybe some of the miners who got burned out. They've got no love for Coulter. They agreed to meet at moonrise near the canyon mouth. As Ada and Jonah rode off, May turned to Eli. You're worried. Skeleton Canyon got its name for a reason. Apache used to run cavalry patrols into those dead ends. Pick them off one by one. He paused. And if Coulter gets wind of what we're doing, he already knows we're up to something. Might as well make it count. She mounted her horse with practiced ease. I need to stop by the schoolhouse, get some supplies. Meet you tonight. He watched her ride off, uneasy settling in his gut like bad whiskey. Something felt wrong about this day, the very air seeming to hold its breath. That night, 8 figures gathered in the shadow of Skeleton Canyon. Besides Eli, May, Ada, and Jonah, Nora had brought 3 men former miners named Chen Wei, Patrick O'Brien, and Salvador Reyes. Hard men who'd lost everything to Coulter's machinations and had nothing left to lose. We split into pairs, Eli instructed, spreading out a rough map by lamplight. Each team takes a section. We're looking for stone markers about 3 feet high, carved with government survey symbols. Should be 4 of them, marking the corners of the original Sweetwater claim. What if Coulter's men have destroyed them? Chenwei asked, his English careful but clear. Then we look for the bases, May said. Jamie wrote that the surveyors dug them deep, anchored with concrete. Even if the tops are gone, the foundations should remain. They divided up Eli with May, Jonah with O'Brien, Ada with Reyes, Nora with Chen Wei. Each team took a different canyon branch, agreeing to meet back in 2 hours. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light and black shadows across the canyon walls. Eli led the way, reading the landscape with old skill, May close behind. They moved in silence, communicating with gestures, both aware that sound carried strangely in these stone corridors. An hour in, May grabbed Eli's arm. "There," she whispered, pointing to a jumble of rocks that looked deliberately placed. They dismounted, investigating carefully. Under the pile, they found a granite marker, the government seal still visible despite years of weather. May produced paper and charcoal, making a rubbing of the inscription. "One down," Eli murmured. Then he froze. "Listen, hoofbeats, multiple riders, moving fast. Too fast for caution in these treacherous canyons unless—" "They know exactly where we are," May breathed. Gunfire erupted from the canyon rim. Bullets whined off rocks, sending chips flying. Eli shoved May behind the marker, returning fire at muzzle flashes above. Their horses screamed and bolted. "Eli, May." Jonah's voice echoed from somewhere to their left, followed by more gunshots. "It's an ambush," Eli said grimly. "They were waiting for us." Red Mallory's laugh boomed across the canyon. "That's right, Cartwright. Did you really think we didn't know about your little treasure hunt?" May clutched the rubbing to her chest. "We have to warn the others." A figure dropped from the rocks above, landing hard. Patrick O'Brien, blood spreading across his shirt. He tried to speak, managed only a wet cough before going still. "Murderers!" Jonah's voice cracked with rage. More gunfire, the muzzle flashes creating a deadly light show. "Stay down," Eli ordered May. He belly crawled to O'Brien, checked for a pulse. Nothing. The man's eyes stared at the stars, seeing nothing. A scream echoed through the canyon. Female. Eli's blood ran cold. Ada or Nora. "We're sitting ducks here," May said. "We need to move." Eli scanned the terrain, his mind racing through possibilities. The canyon walls were too steep to climb, but there a narrow crack in the stone, barely wide enough for a person. "This way," he hissed, pulling May toward the opening. They squeezed through, rough stone tearing at their clothes. Behind them, boots scrambled down the canyon walls, Mallory's men closing in. The crack opened into a wider space, a natural chamber in the rock. Moonlight filtered through gaps above, revealing ancient native paintings on the walls. And in the corner, another survey marker. "2," May said, already making a rubbing despite the danger. Voices echoed through the crack they'd entered. They went this way. Eli spotted another exit, little more than a shadow in the rock. "Move." They crawled through on hands and knees, emerging onto a narrow ledge. Below, the canyon floor dropped away into darkness. Above, the rim seemed impossibly far. "There!" A shout from behind. A gun fired, the bullet sparking off stone inches from Eli's head. No choice. They ran along the ledge, trusting to moonlight and luck. The path narrowed, crumbled, reformed. May slipped once, Eli catching her arm just in time, her feet kicking pebbles into the void. More shots from behind, but firing while pursuing on the treacherous ledge threw off their aim. Small mercy. The ledge ended at a gap 6 feet of empty air to the next section. Eli jumped first, turning to catch May. She leaped without hesitation, slamming into his chest. They tumbled together, rolling dangerously close to the edge before Eli caught a rock outcrop. "Can't keep running," May gasped. "The others—" A figure appeared on the ledge ahead. Eli drew, fired in one motion. The man cried out, tumbling into darkness. "Eli," Nora's voice, desperate and close. "Help!" They found her around a bend, crouched over Chen Wei. The man was conscious but bleeding from a head wound. Nora pressed a torn piece of her skirt to the injury. "Rode us down like dogs," Chen Wei muttered. "Got separated from the others." "Can he travel?" Eli asked. "Not fast," Nora said, "but leaving him isn't an option." May was already checking their surroundings. "There's an overhang here. Defensive position." She looked at Eli. "You get them to safety. I'll hold them off." "Like hell." "I'm not Jamie," her voice cut like a blade. "I'm not going to die while others make decisions for me. Go!" Before he could argue, she'd taken position behind a boulder, his Winchester steady in her hands. When did she become so comfortable with a weapon? "Take the North Trail," May continued, not looking at him. "It loops back to where we entered. I'll follow when I can." Eli wanted to argue, but Chen Wei groaned, and Nora's eyes pleaded. Cursing, he helped the injured man to his feet. 5 minutes, he told May. "Then you run, regardless." "Go," she repeated, supporting Chen Wei between them. Eli and Nora navigated the treacherous path behind them. May's rifle spoke once, twice, an answering volley, then silence. They'd made it halfway when the night exploded into flame. Eli turned to see fire racing up the canyon. Coulter's men had set the dry brush ablaze. In the drought-parched landscape, it spread like water released from a dam, leaping from bush to dead tree with hungry glee. "May!" he shouted, but the roar of flame swallowed his voice. "Keep moving," Nora urged. "She's smart. She'll find another way." They stumbled on, smoke beginning to sting their eyes. Other figures emerged from the maze, Jonah supporting Reyes, who clutched a bloody arm. No sign of Ada. "Where's the doc?" Eli demanded. "Got separated," Jonah coughed. "The fire, we have to get out." The canyon had become a furnace. Flames licked at the walls, creating their own wind, sucking oxygen from the air. They ran, no longer caring about pursuit, focused only on reaching the entrance before the fire cut them off. A figure staggered from the smoke, Ada, her medical bag still clutched in one hand, the other pressed to a gash on her forehead. "Thank God," she gasped. "Thought I was done for." They burst from the canyon into clear air, collapsing in the sand, gulping blessed oxygen. But Eli was already turning back, searching the flame-lit darkness. "Where is she?" he asked, though he knew no one had an answer. Minutes passed. The fire raged, turning night into hellish day. Then movement at the canyon mouth. A lone figure emerged from the inferno, clothes singed, face black with soot. May, carrying 2 more survey rubbings. She made it 3 steps before her knees buckled. Eli caught her, lowering her gently to the ground. 4 markers, she whispered, pressing the papers into his hands. "I found all 4. "You magnificent fool," Eli said roughly. "You could have died." "But I didn't." She managed a smile. "And now we have proof, legal proof that Coulter's been stealing water that belongs to—" She coughed, wincing. "To us. The courthouse will burn before Judge Lyle accepts these," Jonah said bitterly. "Then we take them higher," May said. "Federal marshals, the territorial governor, someone who can't be bought." Hoofbeats thundered in the distance. Mallory's men regrouping for pursuit. "Scatter," Eli ordered. "Different directions. Meet at the old mission ruins tomorrow night." They divided quickly, Ada taking Chen Wei on her horse, Jonah and Reyes heading south, Nora riding alone toward town. Eli pulled May up behind him on the horse they'd caught. "Hold on," he said. She wrapped her arms around his waist, and they rode hard into the desert night, the burning canyon falling behind like the gates of hell. In his shirt, the survey rubbings crackled 4 pieces of paper that might change everything, bought with blood and courage. As dawn approached, they finally stopped to rest in a cluster of boulders. May slid from the horse, exhausted, and Eli saw the burn on her hand she'd been hiding. "Let me see," he said. "It's nothing. It's something." He tore strips from his shirt, binding the wound carefully. "You saved us all tonight. Those markers mean nothing if we're all dead." She leaned against him suddenly, as if her strength had finally run out. "We lost Patrick. Maybe others. Was it worth it?" Eli thought of O'Brien's sightless eyes, of families fleeing town, of all the violence that seemed to follow wherever he went. Then he thought of the alternative, letting Coulter's empire of fear continue unchallenged. "Ask me when this is over," he said quietly. May lifted her head, studied his face in the growing light. "You're not the same man who wanted to be left alone 5 days ago." "No," he agreed. "That man was hiding. This one." He touched the rubbings in his shirt. "This one might actually do something that matters." "Jamie would be proud," she murmured. "I think you mean you're proud," Eli corrected gently. She smiled, tired but real. "Maybe both." The sun rose over the desert, painting the world in shades of gold and red. Somewhere behind them, smoke still rose from Skeleton Canyon. Ahead lay the old mission, their allies, and whatever came next in this war they'd started. "Ready?" Eli asked. May straightened, that familiar steel returning to her spine. "Always." They mounted up and rode toward the rising sun. 2 figures against the vastness of the desert, carrying proof of truth in a land built on lies. The real fight was just beginning. The old mission of San Felipe stood like a broken tooth against the desert sky, its adobe walls crumbling but still defiant after 50 years of abandonment. Eli and May arrived just after sunset to find their allies already gathered in what had been the sanctuary, a fitting place, perhaps for conspirators seeking their own kind of salvation. Jonah Pike paced near the altar, his deputy's badge catching the lamplight. "Sheriff Brennan's put out wanted posters," he reported without preamble. "Arson, theft of documents, disturbing the peace. $500 bounty on you. Eli, $300 for May." "We're flattered," May said dryly. Though Eli noticed how she pressed a hand to her injured side. The ride had been hard on all of them. Ada looked up from tending Chen Wei's wounds. "At least you made it. We lost Patrick, and Salvador's still missing." Her voice carried the weight of too many losses. "This is getting people killed." "People were already dying," Nora said firmly from her seat on a broken pew. "Just slower and quieter. At least now they're fighting back." "Speaking of fighting back," May said, producing the survey rubbings from Eli's saddlebag. "We need to get these authenticated. Timothy, can you access the territorial records?" Timothy Morse, the nervous courthouse clerk, practically vibrated with anxiety. Judge Lyles locked down the archive, but he swallowed hard. "There's another way. The Arizona Territory Courthouse in Prescott would have copies. Original federal surveys always got duplicated." "Prescott's 4 days' ride," Eli calculated. "Through Coulter's territory the whole way." "Not the whole way," a new voice said from the doorway. Everyone spun, hands reaching for weapons, but the figure stepped into the light with raised hands. A Chinese man in his 50s, wearing the clothes of a merchant, but carrying himself like someone used to command. "Li Hongjiang," he introduced himself. "I run the import business in Nogales, and I've been waiting for someone to challenge Coulter for a very long time." Chen Wei struggled to sit up. Speaking rapid Cantonese, Lee responded in kind, then switched to English. My nephew tells me you saved his life. This creates obligation. His dark eyes studied them shrewdly. But beyond obligation, I have my own reasons. Coulter's water fees have strangled trade routes. His harassment drives away the workers I need. Bad for business. What are you offering? May asked. Ever direct. Safe passage to Prescott. I have a supply train leaving tomorrow, 20 wagons, 30 guards. Coulter's men don't attack my convoys. Too costly, and I provide goods he needs. Lee smiled thinly. Hide among my workers. You could reach Prescott unmolested. Why trust you? Eli asked. Because, Mr. Cartwright, Jamie Coulter once did me a great service. At May's sharp intake of breath, Lee nodded. Yes, I knew your husband. He warned me of his father's plan to seize my warehouse. Gave me time to move my most valuable goods. A good man. His death was regrettable. May stood slowly, hope and grief warring on her face. You'd help us for Jamie's sake. I'd help you because it's good business. But yes, for Jamie's sake, I'll ensure you reach Prescott safely. Lee paused. There's one condition. My trains carry more than silk and spices. Sometimes they carry information. Messages that certain parties don't want delivered. You would be part of that cargo. Smuggling, Jonah asked uncomfortably. Facilitating communication between those who oppose corruption. Lee corrected. Federal investigators have been trying to document Coulter's network for months. My trains help their messages avoid interference. Eli and May exchanged glances. An alliance with smugglers might compromise their legal standing, but without help, they'd never reach Prescott alive. We accept, May decided. When do we leave? Dawn. Meet at Coyote Wash, 5 miles south. Come dressed as laborers. Lee turned to go, then paused. Miss O'Rourke, your husband once asked me why I risked so much fighting men like his father. I told him in China, we have a saying the mountains are high and the emperor is far away. Here the federal government is your distant emperor, but mountains can be climbed and distances crossed. Justice delayed is still justice. After Lee left, the group fell into planning. Ada would stay with the wounded, hiding at Nora's Inn. Jonah would maintain his deputy facade, gathering intelligence. Timothy would work on creating diversions at the courthouse. It's too dangerous for everyone. Eli said, May and I can handle Prescott alone. Like hell, Nora said flatly. Rose is coming with you. My daughter's got a gift for languages and a face people trust. You'll need both. Before anyone could protest further, the mission door burst open. Salvador Reyes stumbled in, supporting a woman none of them recognized young. Native features, dressed in the remnants of what had been a fine dress. Found her on the road, Salvador gasped. Coulter's men. They burned the reservation school. She's the teacher. Ada immediately went to work, but the woman pushed her away. No time, she said in accented English. You need to know Coulter's not just stealing water. He's found something else. In the old mines, silver, a new vein, enough to buy judges all the way to Washington. Who are you? May asked. Sarah Yazzie. I taught at the mission school until tonight. Her dark eyes blazed with fury. 20 children in that building. We got them out, but barely. Coulter's trying to claim reservation land now. Says the treaty lines were drawn wrong. The survey markers. Eli realized. If he can make the originals disappear, redraw the boundaries, he can steal a whole reservation. Sarah finished. My people have resisted, but after tonight, she touched a burn on her arm. They're ready to fight, real fighting, blood fighting. Silence greeted this announcement. They all knew what a native uprising would mean: federal troops, martial law, the excuse Coulter needed to seize complete control. We have to reach Prescott, May said urgently. Get federal intervention before... Gunshots echoed outside. Everyone dove for cover as windows shattered. Jonah peered out cautiously. Mallory's men, dozen of them, maybe more. Surrender peacefully. Red Mallory's voice boomed. And we might let some of you live. Keep fighting, and we'll burn this mission like we did that school. They wouldn't, Rosa gasped. This is sacred ground. They would, Sarah said grimly. Sacred means nothing to men like that. Eli assessed their position. 1 door, 3 windows. Limited ammunition. Against a dozen men in the open. They might hold out briefly, but the ending was inevitable. Unless... He turned to Salvador. You know these ruins. Is there another way out? The crypt, Salvador said reluctantly. Below the altar, leads to the old well house, but it's been sealed for years. Then we unseal it. Eli grabbed a lamp. Jonah, Timothy, give us 5 minutes, then negotiate. Stall. While the others provided covering fire, Eli and Salvador pried at the altar stones. Ancient mortar crumbled, revealing steps descending into darkness. The air that rushed up smelled of centuries and secrets. Ladies first, Eli said, helping May down, one by one. They descended May, Sarah, Rosa, Nora. Chen Wei supported between Salvador and another man. What about the rest of you? May protested as Eli prepared to close the entrance. Someone needs to make them believe the surrender, Jonah said. He managed a weak smile. Besides, I'm still technically a lawman. They won't kill me, probably. Ada pressed medical supplies into May's hands. For the journey, find that federal marshal. Make this count. Eli. Timothy thrust a leather case at him. Judge Lyle's private ledgers. I've been copying them for weeks. Everything's there, bribes, false deeds, even murder confessions, enough to hang them all. Above, Mallory was shouting final warnings. No more time. Go, Jonah ordered. We'll buy you what time we can. Eli sealed the entrance, plunging the crypt into darkness. By lamplight, they navigated the narrow passage, Rosa whispering prayers in Spanish, Sarah supporting Chen Wei when Salvador tired. The tunnel seemed endless, each step taking them further from their friends and deeper into the earth. Finally, sweet air. They emerged in the well house, a quarter mile from the mission. Behind them, flames were already licking at the mission walls. Mallory hadn't waited for surrender after all. Bastards, Nora cursed, tears streaming. Those bastards! Move, Eli commanded, forcing down his own rage. Coyote Wash, Lee's people. It's our only chance now. They ran through the desert night, guided by stars and desperation. Behind them, the mission burned like a beacon, visible for miles, Coulter's warning to anyone who might resist. At Coyote Wash, Li Hongjiang's convoy waited as promised. The merchant himself stood by the lead wagon, his face grave as he watched the distant fire. So, he said quietly, Coulter escalates. This changes things. He gestured to his men. Hide them well, double the guard. We leave immediately. As they were bundled into false compartments beneath wagon beds, Lee pulled Eli aside. That fire tells me Coulter grows desperate. Desperate men make mistakes, but they also do terrible things. He pressed something into Eli's hand, a small leather pouch. Mexican silver dollars, untraceable. You may need funds in Prescott. Why help us this much? Eli asked. Lee's smile was sad. Because 40 years ago, I was young and idealistic too. I failed then, in China. Perhaps you'll succeed here. He paused. And because Jamie Coulter was the only white man who ever looked at me and saw just a man, not a Chinaman. Such debts transcend death. Hidden in the wagon's false bottom, pressed against May in the darkness, Eli felt the weight of everyone counting on them. Above, he could hear Lee's guards calling to each other in multiple languages. the creak of wheels beginning to turn. "Eli," May whispered. "Do you think the others?" "They're smart. They'll survive." He found her hand in the darkness, squeezed it. "We all will. And then we'll make Coulter pay for every life he's taken." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "The ledgers Timothy gave you, I looked at one page while we ran. Eli, it's worse than we thought. The murders, the land grabs, it goes back 20 years. Jamie's grandfather wasn't the only one who opposed Brant and died mysteriously. Then we expose it all." Eli said firmly, "Every crime, every victim, we drag it all into the light." The wagon lurched into motion, beginning the long journey to Prescott, in the darkness of their hiding place, surrounded by the smell of spices and silk. Eli and May held tight to their evidence and each other. Behind them, the mission burned. Ahead, federal judges waited. Between them and justice lay 4 days of dangerous road, Coulter's searching men, and the growing threat of violence that could consume the entire territory. But they had truth on their side now, documented, witnessed truth. Sometimes, Eli thought as the wagon rolled through the desert night, truth was enough. Sometimes it had to be. The journey to Santa Fe had become something larger, a flight toward justice that carried the hopes of everyone Coulter had wronged. In the darkness, May's breathing steadied against his shoulder, exhausted but determined. They would reach Prescott. They would present their evidence, and one way or another, Brant Coulter's empire of fear would fall. The wagon wheels turned, carrying them toward dawn and whatever waited beyond. The sandstorm hit on the second day out of Coyote Wash, turning the world into a howling wall of brown fury. Lee's convoy pulled into a tight circle, drivers covering their faces, horses stamping nervously as grit filled the air like a living thing. In their hidden compartment, Eli and May pressed cloth to their faces, trying to filter the dust seeping through every crack. The wagon rocked as winds buffeted it, and somewhere outside, men shouted in 3 languages, fighting to keep the animals calm. "How long do these last?" May asked, her voice muffled. "Hours, sometimes days." Eli shifted, trying to ease cramped muscles. The false bottom that had seemed clever now felt like a coffin. "Lee knows what he's doing. We wait." But waiting, he'd learned, was when thoughts caught up with you, in the enforced stillness. Memories surfaced, the mission burning, friends left behind, choices made in haste that couldn't be taken back. "Tell me about the fire," May said quietly, as if reading his mind. "The one from before, the mining camp." Eli stiffened. "You already know." "I know the facts. Tell me what really happened. We might die in this storm." "Eli, I'd like to know who I'm dying beside." The wind howled, giving strange privacy to their confession box. Eli closed his eyes. Let the words come. "I was tracking Apache raiders, real ones, or so I thought. The trail led to Superstition Mountains, ended at a Chinese mining camp. My scouts swore they'd seen the raiders enter, weapons drawn." He paused, throat tight. "I should have verified, should have waited for daylight, but I was young, eager to prove myself, ordered the attack at dawn." "What happened?" "The raiders were actors. White men paid to dress like Apache, lead us there. The miners had found silver on land Coulter wanted, so he orchestrated a tragedy." Eli's voice went flat. "We hit the camp with everything. The cooking fire spread to the powder storage. 17 dead, including 5 children hiding in a supply shed." May's hand found his in the darkness. "It wasn't your fault." "I gave the order. I led the charge. Their deaths are on my conscience forever." He squeezed her fingers. "Afterward, I found evidence of the setup. Tried to report it. My commander said to forget it, no one cared about dead Chinese miners. And Coulter had too many friends. So I resigned. Came here. Hid. Until I dragged you back into it." "No." He turned toward her voice, though he could barely see her outline. "You gave me a chance to fight back. to maybe balance the scales a little. She was quiet for a moment. Then, Jamie had nightmares about his father's crimes. He'd wake up gasping, saying he could smell smoke. I think he knew, deep down, what Brant was capable of. It's part of why he wanted to be a doctor, to save lives instead of taking them. "Tell me about him," Eli said. "Not the facts, the man." May's laugh was soft, sad. He had beautiful hands, long fingers, like a pianist, but he used them to heal setting bones, stitching wounds. The reservation school, he volunteered there twice a week, teaching basic medicine. Her voice caught. The children called him Dr. Jamie. He was so proud of that. "How did you meet?" "At a lecture in Tucson, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, if you can believe it. He was the only man there, sitting in the back row, taking notes furiously. Afterward, we argued for 2 hours about whether science without conscience was mankind's greatest threat." She shifted closer, seeking warmth. "He walked me home through streets that weren't safe for a woman alone. At my door, he said, 'I'd like to argue with you again sometime. Miss O'Rourke.' So earnest, so formal. I fell in love right there. And the marriage? Secret from the start. He knew what Brant would do. We met at the San Felipe mission, the one that burned. Father Martinez married us by candlelight, just us and 2 witnesses." Her voice grew fierce. 16 months we had, 16 months of sneaking moments between his rounds and my teaching, planning a future we'd never see. The storm's howl intensified, and the wagon shuddered. Outside, something crashed, another wagon tipping, perhaps, or supplies breaking loose. They pressed closer. 2 people finding shelter in shared grief. "I dream about him," May admitted. "But lately, the dreams are different. He's not asking me to avenge him anymore. He's asking me to live, to find happiness again." She paused. "Is that betrayal? Do you think to want life beyond grief?" "No," Eli said firmly. "The dead don't own us. We honor them by living fully, not by dying slowly." "Is that what you've been doing, dying slowly on that ranch?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Before Eli could answer, the wagon lurched violently. Shouts erupted outside, not storm panic, but alarm. Through the thin walls, they heard Lee's voice raised in command, then gunshots. "Stay down," Eli hissed, reaching for his pistol. But the shots weren't directed at them. After tense minutes, footsteps approached their compartment. 3 knocks, pause. 2 knocks, Lee's signal. They emerged into a world transformed. The storm hadn't fully passed, but it had lessened to a mere gritty breeze. What they saw in the brown twilight made them freeze. Bodies. 3 of them, wearing the distinctive black dusters of Coulter's men. Lee stood over them, his own men forming a protective circle. "Scouts," Lee explained calmly. "Thought the storm would hide their approach." He nudged one body with his boot. "They were wrong. They know we're with you," May said. "Perhaps, or perhaps they simply grow desperate, attacking any convoy that might carry federal messages." Lee's expression was unreadable. "Either way, we must assume compromise. Change of plans." He led them to another wagon, this one loaded with grain sacks. Hidden beneath was a different compartment, larger, but also containing other occupants, 2 women and a man, all wearing the kind of clothes that marked them as something other than laborers. "Federal investigators," Lee introduced quietly. "Meet Marshal Harrison Beck and Agent Sarah Winters and Dorothy Chen. They've been documenting Coulter's network for months." Beck was a grizzled man in his 50s, with the kind of eyes that had seen too much. "Ma'am, Cartwright, heard about your mission. Glad to have you aboard." "You know who we are?" Eli asked warily. "Word travels, even to federal ears." Agent Winters, a sharp-faced woman who couldn't be 30, smiled thinly. "Your evidence could be the key we need, Judge Lyle's ledgers, especially." "Assuming we live to present them," Agent Chen added, She was older, with streaks of gray in her black hair. "Coulter's getting reckless. That school burning. He's given us grounds for federal intervention, but we need documentary proof of conspiracy." "Which we have," May said, patting the leather case. "Then let's ensure it reaches Prescott." Beck shifted, revealing a badge and a very large gun. "Lee, can your men handle another fight if needed?" "My men are prepared. The question is whether Coulter is prepared for what comes next." Lee smiled coldly. "He attacks federal agents in my care. That makes this personal, very personal." They redistributed themselves. Eli and May now rode with the federal agents, sharing information as the convoy resumed movement. The storm faded to a memory, leaving clear skies that felt somehow ominous. "Tell us about Dry Willow," Beck requested. "Every detail. We're building a case that goes beyond land theft." For hours, they talked. May detailed the debt schemes, the forced auctions, the mysterious deaths. Eli contributed his knowledge of the water rights, the reservation boundaries, the pattern of violence. The agents took notes, asked pointed questions, built a picture of systematic corruption. "It's not just Coulter," Winters said finally. "He's part of a network, railroad barons, mining interests, even some federal officials. They're carving up the territory like a roasted pig." "Then we carve back," May said fiercely. Beck studied her. "You remind me of someone. Ever hear of Susan B., Anthony Nowell? You've got the same fire, same refusal to accept the world as it is." As night fell, they made camp in a box canyon defensive positions. Guards posted. Lee's efficiency impressed even the federal agents. Eli and May found themselves sitting by a small fire, finally able to stretch cramped muscles. "Strange allies," May observed, watching Lee's men interact with federal agents. "Strange times." Eli accepted coffee from a passing guard, savored the bitter warmth. "You realize what we've started can't be stopped now, even if we wanted to." "I realized that when Jamie died." She leaned against his shoulder, a gesture that felt natural now. "But you could have stayed on your ranch, lived quiet. Why didn't you?" "Because a remarkable woman asked me to buy her at a horse auction," he said simply. "And because hiding hadn't healed anything, just postponed the reckoning. And now?" He looked at her, really looked. Firelight caught the red in her hair, highlighted the determined line of her jaw, but also showed the weariness, the grief that still lingered. This war had cost her everything, yet she kept fighting. "Now I think maybe redemption isn't about balancing scales," he said slowly. "Maybe it's about choosing to stand with people like you, fighting battles that matter, win or lose." May turned toward him, and something electric passed between them. The camp noise faded. The world narrowed to just this two people who'd found each other in the midst of chaos. "Eli," she whispered, and he could hear years of loneliness in that single word. He touched her face gently, thumb tracing the line of her cheekbone. "I know, me too." She kissed him then, fierce and desperate and sweet all at once. His arms went around her, pulling her close, and for a moment, there was no Coulter, no conspiracy, no dead to mourn, just this life asserting itself against all odds. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, May laughed shakily. "That was unplanned." "The best things usually are." He kept her close, unwilling to let go entirely. "May, when this is over—" "Don't!" She pressed fingers to his lips. "Don't make promises about after, not yet. Let's just have this moment." He understood. Too much uncertainty ahead, too much that could go wrong. But still, he held her as the fire burned low, and felt something broken inside him beginning to mend. "Riders coming!" The shout shattered the peace. They scrambled up, hands going to weapons. But the approaching group carried torches and a white flag. As they drew nearer, Eli recognized the lead rider. Jonah Pike, battered but alive. Thank God, the deputy called out. We need the federal marshals. Now. Coulter's lost his mind. He's declared martial law in Dry Willow. And he's planning something terrible. You have to stop him before... Before what? Beck demanded, striding forward. Jonah's face was grim in the torchlight. Before he dynamites the dam above the reservation, floods the whole valley, kills everyone he can't control. Stunned silence greeted this announcement. Then May spoke, her voice like tempered steel. Then we stop him, whatever it takes. She looked at Eli, and he saw his own determination reflected in her eyes. We stop him. The storm had passed, but the real tempest was just beginning. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, Brant Coulter waited with dynamite and madness, ready to drown a valley rather than lose his empire. Time was running out. The federal courthouse in Santa Fe stood like a fortress of justice against the morning sky, its red brick facade catching the early light. Eli and May climbed the steps flanked by Marshal Beck and his agents, while Li Hongjiang's men formed a protective perimeter around the building. They'd ridden through the night, changing horses twice, racing against whatever catastrophe Coulter planned. Judge Alexander Caldwell, Beck explained as they entered the marble halls. Appointed directly by President Harrison. Can't be bought, can't be intimidated. If anyone will give us emergency injunctions, it's him. They were ushered into a wood-paneled chamber where a man in his 60s sat behind a massive oak desk. Judge Caldwell had the kind of face carved by years of difficult decisions, deep lines, sharp eyes, and a mouth that looked unused to smiling. Marshal Beck, he acknowledged. I received your telegraph. These are the witnesses. Your Honor. May stepped forward. The leather case held like a shield. We have evidence of systematic corruption, murder, and conspiracy reaching from Dry Willow to the territorial capital. Show me. For the next hour, they laid it out, every document, every testimony, every piece of proof. The judge examined each paper carefully, asking pointed questions. His expression grew darker with each revelation. This ledger, he said finally, holding up Judge Lyle's private accounts. These entries document bribes paid to a sitting territorial judge. Yes, Your Honor, Timothy Morse confirmed. He'd arrived an hour earlier, having fled Dry Willow when the violence escalated. I copied them myself from Judge Lyle's private safe. And this marriage certificate you claim it establishes legal ownership of the Sweetwater Valley water rights. My late husband was Brant Coulter's eldest son, May said steadily. By territorial law and his grandfather's will, those rights passed to Jamie upon marriage, and upon his death, to me. Caldwell studied her. You realize what you're accusing Brant Coulter of patricide? I'm accusing him of murder, Your Honor. Whether the victim was his son is incidental to justice. The judge's eyebrows rose slightly. Well put, Mrs. Coulter. O'Rourke, May corrected firmly. I use my maiden name. A commotion outside interrupted them. Through the windows, they could see a crowd gathering. Word traveled fast in Santa Fe. More importantly, Eli spotted riders in black dusters at the crowd's edge. Coulter's men are here, he warned. Let them come, Caldwell said calmly. This is a federal building. They have no authority here. He turned to his clerk. Draft emergency injunctions immediately. One staying all property transfers in the Dry Willow region pending investigation. Another ordering federal marshals to secure the Sweetwater Dam and prevent any destruction of property. Your Honor, Beck interjected. We need more than paper. Coulter's declared martial law. He has 50 armed men, maybe more. Then you'll have federal troops. Caldwell's voice turned steel. I'm invoking the Insurrection Act. Wire Fort Union immediately. I want a full cavalry company in Dry Willow within 48 hours. That might be too late, Jonah said urgently. The dam. Which is why you'll leave immediately with the advance force. The judge stood, suddenly seeming taller. Marshal Beck, deputize whoever you need. Mr. Cartwright, I understand you have military experience. Former cavalry scout, Your Honor. Consider yourself temporarily reinstated. Federal authority. He scribbled something, handed it to Eli. This gives you legal power to arrest Brant Coulter and any who aid him. Eli stared at the paper, a U.S. Marshal's Commission. Temporary but official. The thing he'd thrown away 5 years ago. Handed back like a gift or a curse. I'll need men, he said finally. You'll have them. Li Hongjiang spoke from the doorway. My guards are at your disposal. Coulter made this personal when he attacked my convoy. And us, Agent Chen added. Winters and I might be investigators, but we can shoot. The reservation will fight too, Sarah Yazzie said. She'd been quiet throughout the hearing, but now her voice carried iron. My people have suffered enough. Give us federal backing. We'll help stop him. Judge Caldwell nodded slowly. Do what needs done, but understand I want Coulter alive if possible. He needs to stand trial, publicly. The territory needs to see justice done properly. If possible, May said quietly. And something in her tone made the judge look at her sharply. Hey, Mrs. O'Rourke. Grief is understandable. Vengeance is not justice. I know the difference, Your Honor. May's chin lifted. But I also know Brant Coulter. He won't come quietly. They burst from the courthouse into controlled chaos. Beck shouted orders, organizing the mixed-force federal agents, Lee's guards, local volunteers who'd appeared as word spread. Weapons were distributed, horses readied. 60 men, Beck reported to Eli. Not enough for a siege, but maybe enough to stop a dam demolition. We don't siege, Eli said, his mind already working terrain and tactics. We hit fast, secure the dam, then deal with the town. He turned to May. You should stay here. It's safer. I'm going. Her voice brooked no argument. This started with me buying my way out of that auction. It ends with me seeing it through. He wanted to argue, but saw the futility. May O'Rourke had walked through fire, literal and figurative, to get here. She wouldn't stop now. They rode out as the sun reached its zenith, a mixed cavalry of justice racing against time. Eli set a punishing pace, knowing every hour counted. At their first rest stop, a telegraph was waiting, sent by Ada from Dry Willow. Coulter has Sarah's schoolchildren, hostages at his ranch. Come fast. The words hit like cold water. Children, of course Coulter would sink that low. Changes things, Beck said grimly. Can't just charge in if he's got hostages. Sarah, Eli called. The teacher rode over, read the message, and went very still. 20 children, she whispered. The youngest is 6. We'll get them out, May promised. All of them. How? Sarah's composure cracked. He'll use them as shields, trade their lives for safe passage. No, Eli said slowly. A plan forming. He'll use them to control the situation, but that works both ways. He looked at the assembled force. We split up. Main force to the dam, that's still the priority. Small team to the ranch for the children. Suicide mission, Beck said bluntly. Coulter's ranch is a fortress. Not from the north, May said suddenly. There's a box canyon behind the property. Jamie showed me once, used to play there as a boy. It's a back way in. You sure? I'm sure. Her green eyes blazed. I can guide a small team. They divided forces as the sun began its afternoon descent. Beck took 40 men toward the dam. Eli led the smaller group, May, Sarah, Jonah, Lee, and 6 of the best fighters toward Coulter's ranch. The ride was tense, everyone aware of what awaited. As they neared the property, Eli called a halt in a grove of cottonwoods. From here, we go quiet, he instructed. Lee, your men circle east. Wait for my signal. Jonah, you and Sarah come with May and me through the canyon. We get the children out first, then deal with Coulter." "And if he's with the children?" Sarah asked. Eli checked his weapons methodically. "Then we improvise." The canyon was as May described, narrow, twisting, ending in a tumble of rocks below the ranch's back wall. They climbed in growing shadows, every sound seeming thunderous. At the top, they could see into the compound. The main house sat like a bloated spider in the center, surrounded by outbuildings and corrals. Armed men patrolled, but their attention focused outward, toward the main approaches. There, May pointed to a low adobe building. "The old chapel. Bars on the windows, that's where he'd put them." Through the barred windows, small faces were visible. Some crying, others eerily quiet. Eli's jaw clenched. "2 guards on the chapel," he observed. 4 more in the courtyard. Coulter's probably in the main house. "I can get to the chapel." Sarah said, "The children know me, if I can signal them to be ready." "Too dangerous," Jonah protested. "Everything's dangerous now," Sarah replied. "Let me do this." Eli studied the layout, calculating angles and distances. "All right, Sarah and May to the chapel. Jonah and I create a distraction at the main gate. When the guards move, you get those children out the back." "What kind of distraction?" Jonah asked nervously. Eli smiled grimly. "The kind Coulter won't expect." They separated, shadows within shadows. Eli and Jonah circled to the main gate while the women crept toward the chapel. At Eli's signal, Lee's men would attack from the east, but timing was everything. At the gate, 2 guards lounged, passing a bottle between them. Overconfident, sloppy. Coulter's hiring standards had slipped. "Deputy Pike," Eli called out, stepping into view. "Come to serve federal warrants. Open this gate." The guards scrambled for weapons, shouting alarms. Men poured from buildings, exactly as planned. In the chaos, Eli saw May and Sarah reach the chapel, working on the door. "Federal marshals," Eli kept shouting, drawing attention. "Brant Coulter, you're under arrest." Gunfire erupted. Eli and Jonah dove for cover as bullets chewed wood and adobe around them. But the distraction worked. Guards rushed toward the gate, leaving other areas exposed. Then Coulter himself appeared on the main house's balcony, and Eli's blood chilled. The man held a small figure, a boy, maybe 8 years old, pressed against the railing. "Federal warrants," Coulter laughed. An ugly sound. "Here's what I think of federal authority." He held the child over the railing, 30 feet above stone pavement. The boy screamed, tiny hands clutching at Coulter's arm. "Let him go." Eli stepped into the open, weapon lowered. "Your fight's with us, not children." "Everything's leverage. Cartwright, you should know that." Coulter's eyes were wild. The controlled businessman facade finally cracked. "Call off your men or I drop him." Time slowed. Eli saw May and Sarah hustling children from the chapel. Saw Lee's men poised to attack. Saw Jonah aiming at Coulter but without a clear shot. Saw the terror in the child's eyes. "All right," Eli said loudly. "Everyone stand down. We'll negotiate." "Negotiate," Coulter laughed again. "The time for that passed when my son betrayed me for that Irish slut. When you all chose to defy me, now you'll learn what—" The shot came from behind Coulter. He jerked, his grip loosening. The child fell, screaming, but strong hands caught him, Judge Lyle, of all people, pulling the boy to safety. Coulter turned, clutching his shoulder, to find Timothy Morse on the balcony, a smoking derringer in his shaking hands. "You killed Mr. Jamie," Timothy said, tears streaming. "He was kind to me, the only one who was ever kind." Coulter's face contorted with rage. He pulled a hidden gun, aimed at Timothy. Multiple shots rang out from Eli, from Jonah, from Lee's men who'd used the distraction to breach the walls. Brant Coulter tumbled from the balcony, his body hitting stone with a sound that echoed in the sudden silence. Then chaos, Coulter's men surrendering or fleeing, children crying, orders shouted in multiple languages. Eli found himself at Coulter's body, checking for signs of life. None. The Emperor of Dry Willow was dead. His reign ended not in a courtroom, but in the violence he'd sown. "The dam," May said urgently, appearing at his elbow. "We still need to—" A distant rumble cut her off. Everyone turned toward the sound, a deep, grinding noise that grew louder. Closer. "No," Sarah whispered. "He already—" "Not the dam," Lee said sharply, studying the horizon. "That sound! Riders! Many riders!" Over the rise came cavalry, real cavalry, in Union blue, guidons snapping in the evening breeze. At their head rode a familiar figure, Marshal Beck, grinning fiercely. "Fort Union came through," he called out. "Colonel sent 2 companies, dam secure, and—" He noticed Coulter's body. "I see you've been busy." "It's over?" Jonah asked, disbelief coloring his voice. "Just like that?" "The killing's over," May corrected. "The rebuilding, that's just beginning." As federal troops secured the ranch and rounded up Coulter's remaining men, Eli found himself standing apart, watching the sunset paint the desert red. The marshal's badge felt heavy in his pocket, authority he'd never wanted again. Used one last time. May joined him, slipping her hand into his. "What are you thinking?" "That it's done. Coulter's dead. The children are safe. The water rights are yours." He turned to her. "What will you do now?" She considered. "Teach, build, make sure the water flows fair for everyone. Try to heal what Coulter broke." She squeezed his hand. "What about you, back to your ranch, back to hiding?" "No," Eli said firmly. "No more hiding." He pulled her close. "Decision made. If you'll have me, I'd like to help with that rebuilding. Seems I've gotten good at standing with remarkable people." She kissed him then. There on the battlefield turned liberation ground, while freed children laughed and federal justice finally came to Dry Willow. "Partners?" she asked against his lips. "Partners." He agreed. Tomorrow would bring trials for the survivors, legal proceedings for the territory, and the slow work of undoing years of corruption. But tonight, as stars appeared over New Mexico, justice had prevailed through courage, sacrifice, and the unbreakable bonds forged in struggle. The empire had fallen. Now came the harder task, building something better from its ashes. The rains came 3 weeks after Coulter's fall, as if the land itself had been holding its breath. Fat drops splattered on thirsty earth, filling arroyos and awakening seeds that had waited through the long drought. From the porch of the newly established Sweetwater Community School, May watched children of all colors splash through puddles, their laughter mixing with the thunder. "Never thought I'd see the day," Ada said, joining her with 2 cups of coffee. The doctor had taken over part of the building as a clinic, treating miners and ranchers alike. White, Mexican, Chinese, Apache children all learning together. "It's what Jamie dreamed of," May said softly, education as the great equalizer. Through the window, they could see Eli teaching a group of older boys how to properly care for horses. He'd taken to the teaching with surprising patience, his quiet manner calming even the wildest spirits. The federal marshal's badge was long returned to Judge Caldwell, but the authority of respect remained. Indeed, Mrs. O'Rourke. Timothy Morse hurried up the steps, no longer the nervous clerk, but the newly appointed territorial recorder. The final paperwork from Santa Fe? May accepted the documents, scanning quickly. The water cooperative is official. Equal shares for every family, regardless of origin or previous debt. She smiled. Coulter would spin in his grave. "Good," Ada said flatly. "Let him spin." 6 months had passed since that violent night at Coulter's ranch. 6 months of trials, testimony, and gradual transformation. Judge Lyle had been convicted of corruption, sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. Red Mallory and the other enforcers faced murder charges. The territorial government, embarrassed by the scandal, had appointed reform-minded officials to clean up the corruption. But the real changes happened at ground level. The Sweetwater Water Cooperative, managed by an elected board of locals, ensured fair distribution. Nora Vega sat on that board, along with Chen Wei and Sarah Yazzie, bringing together communities that Coulter had kept divided. "Jonah's coming," Eli announced. Entering from the classroom, he'd let his beard grow, and the desert sun had darkened his skin, but the haunted look had left his eyes. "Looks official." Indeed, Jonah Pike rode up wearing the badge of Dry Willow's new sheriff, elected in the territory's first fair contest in decades. He dismounted, grinning broadly. "Letter from Judge Caldwell," he announced. "The federal investigation is officially closed. All of Coulter's illegal holdings have been redistributed to original owners or public trust." He paused dramatically. "And there's funding approved for a new courthouse, a real one, not Coulter's mockery." "Justice architecture," May murmured. "Who'd have thought?" That evening, the community gathered for its weekly meal at Nora's Inn. These dinners had become tradition, former enemies breaking bread together, building understanding one conversation at a time. Li Hongjiang was visiting from Nogales, his trade routes now running smoothly through peaceful territory. To absent friends. Nora raised her glass, and everyone echoed the toast. They'd lost people in the fight: Patrick O'Brien, several miners, 2 of Lee's guards. Their names were carved on a memorial stone near the new water distribution center, ensuring they wouldn't be forgotten. "Any word from Rosa and Timothy?" someone asked. The young couple had married last month, a celebration that brought the whole town together. "Honeymoon in San Francisco," Nora said proudly. "My daughter's seeing the ocean for the first time." As conversations flowed, Eli found May standing by the window, watching the sunset paint Sweetwater Valley gold. The land that had caused so much bloodshed now supported thriving farms and ranches, the water flowing freely to all who needed it. "Regrets?" he asked quietly. "About Coulter?" she considered. "I wanted him to stand trial, to face his victims in court, but—" she shrugged. "He chose his ending. Violence begetting violence. And us," Eli moved closer. Their relationship still new enough to feel miraculous. "Any regrets there?" She turned, studying his face. "You know what Jamie told me once? He said the desert teaches patience, that things grow slowly here, but they grow strong." Her hand found his. "We're growing strong. Eli, no regrets." They'd married quietly 2 months ago. Father Martinez performing the ceremony in the rebuilt San Felipe mission. No secrets this time. No hiding. The whole community had celebrated, seeing in their union a symbol of new beginnings. Mrs. Cartwright," a young voice interrupted. Little Mary Chen, one of May's star pupils, held up a paper. "I finished my essay." May knelt to the child's level, reading carefully. "Excellent work. Mary, your handwriting is improving so much." As the child scampered off, Eli marveled at the transformation. The woman who'd approached him at a horse auction with handcuffs and desperation had become the heart of a reborn community. The school teacher had always been there, but now she taught more than letters, she taught hope. "Speech time," Jonah called out. As sheriff, he'd become unofficial master of ceremonies. "Doc Bell, you're up." Ada stood, uncomfortable with attention but determined. "I've received word from the Territorial Medical Board. They're approving our application for a nursing school, right here in Dry Willow." Cheers erupted. A nursing school would bring education, jobs, and medical care to a region that desperately needed all three. "Sarah Yazzie will co-direct," Ada continued, "bridging traditional healing with modern medicine." More cheers. Sarah stood, blushing, as people congratulated her. The former reservation teacher had become a force for integration, helping communities traumatized by Coulter's divide-and-conquer tactics. As the evening progressed, Eli found himself on the inn's back porch with Marshal Beck, who'd stayed in the territory to oversee reforms. "Ever miss it?" Beck asked. "The scouting life, the simplicity of tracking." "Sometimes," Eli admitted. "But that life was about finding threats. This one's about building something better." He gestured toward the warmly lit inn. "I'll take this complexity." Beck nodded. "Heard from Colonel Morrison at Fort Union. He's recommending you for a commendation. Recognition for your service in stopping Coulter." "I don't need medals." "No, but the territory needs heroes. Examples that standing up to corruption is possible." Beck paused. "Change is fragile. Cartwright, stories like yours help cement it." Later, as the gathering wound down, Eli and May walked to the new water distribution center. The marker stone stood in moonlight, names carved deep, but their attention went to the living memorial, the sound of water flowing freely through channels that fed the entire valley. "Listen," May said softly. "That's the sound of justice." They stood together, remembering the journey from that desperate day at the horse auction to this moment of peace. The cost had been high, paid in blood and courage, but the reward surrounded them, a community reborn. Justice established, hope flowing like water to all who thirsted. "I should check the north channels," Eli said. "Make sure the flow rates are balanced." "Always the engineer now," May teased. "What happened to the lonely rancher who just wanted to be left alone?" "He met a remarkable woman who taught him that some fights are worth joining." He kissed her gently. "And that isolation isn't strength, community is." As they walked the water channels, lantern in hand, other figures joined them. Jonah making his evening rounds, Ada heading home from a late patient, Nora closing up the inn. Sarah organizing tomorrow's lessons, all the threads of a community rewoven stronger than before. At the main gate, they paused. A new sign had been installed. Sweetwater Cooperative, water for all, justice for all. Simple words that had cost so much to make real. "Think it will last?" May asked. "What we've built here." "Nothing lasts forever," Eli said honestly. "But with people like you teaching the next generation, with laws that protect instead of exploit, with communities that stand together." He squeezed her hand. "It's got a fighting chance." Thunder rumbled in the distance, more rain coming to heal the wounded land. They turned back toward town, toward home, toward the future they were building one day at a time. In the territorial records, the transformation of Dry Willow would be reduced to dates and legal documents. But for those who lived it, who fought and bled and hoped together, it was nothing less than resurrection, a town reborn, a land restored, and proof that even the deepest corruption could be cleansed when good people stood together. The storm lantern in Eli's hand cast steady light as they walked, a small flame against vast darkness, but it was enough to show the way. And in Dry Willow, showing the way had become everyone's responsibility. The desert bloomed after rain. So did justice. When watered with courage and community, and in the heart of New Mexico territory, that garden grew strong. Thank you so much for listening to this tale from the Wild West. I hope you enjoyed following Eli and May's journey as much as I enjoyed telling it. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening to this story. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss what resonated with you. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Wild West Night, give this video a like, and don't forget to hit that hype button to help more people discover these tales of courage, justice, and redemption in the American frontier. Until next time, partners.